Hello, I'm Mr. Brown, a instructor down in A-Flight, here with a lesson on Introduction to Flip and the Aero App. First off, the term flip. When we talk about flip, it stands for the Flight Information Publications. So a lot of things that we deal with in our flying falls under the category of flip. Things such as our instrument approach plates, our charts, flight information handbook, the Ifr SUP, all of those things are considered flip. The Aero app that we use in training is simply a viewer that allows us to view the different PDFs that are created to show us the different flip publications. So flip is not the Aero app, and Aero app is not considered flip. It's simply a viewer. Secondly, the publication cycle for flip. The terminal procedure publications, known as TPP, those are generally on a 56-day cycle. That is, the paper version is on a 56-day cycle. So every 56 days, they will publish a new set of flip and incorporate any changes that have been made to things. In the interim, if there is a change that needs to get put out to people, of course, the first place they will turn to is to put it in the Nodums if they need to get the word out quickly on something. Then they'll follow up with what's called a TCN, a terminal change notice. That comes out every 28 days. And it gives us that change if the instrument approach plate is changed for a location. It'll give us the new one, and then when the next 56-day cycle ends and the new one comes out, they will incorporate those changes into the regular publications. Now, when we talk about digital terminal procedure publications, or DTPP, those come out every 28 days, and that's what we have in our Aero app. It's the digital version. So there is no TCN. If anything changes, they simply will put a Nodum out and then work it into the next 28-day cycle of publications. So as far as the Aero app and flip goes, if we first go to general, you can see some of the items we have here. For example, the charts. If I click on chart and I click on the gray banner, it gives me a drop down of all of the different chart types that I have loaded with my set of Aero data. In particular, the ones we are interested in are the CONUS en route, area, high, and low charts. If I click on the low chart, you can see that there are over 35 volumes, 36 to be exact. If I get rid of my little window, you can see the CONUS, and you can see which chart covers which area. So I could click straight on the L19, the low 19. That would give me the chart for the area around where we fly with Randolph. When it comes to the legend for these charts, whether it's the high chart or the low chart, the only place I can find the legend for this is not the banner up top that says legend. That's only the legend for the instrument approach books. So the legend for one of these charts, I just pick any chart that I might want, and I have to scroll all the way over to the side, and this is where you will find the legend for that chart. So I can, if I have a question, I take a look at things. Hey, what is this blue area around Houston? What are some of these numbers? What are some of these symbols mean? What are those nav-aid symbols? And if I come over here to the legend, I can scroll through and find my answer for those things. Simply gives me the term. It doesn't really explain it. If I want the dictionary, in effect, of what those terms mean, what it includes, exactly what that applies to. If I go to general planning in section 2, that's basically our dictionary for everything. And I can look those terms up there and I can get more information. I'll show you where general planning is located here in just a little bit. But these are my charts. The low charts are what we call the Victor routes. The high charts are my jet routes. And you can see that there are 12 charts that encompass the CONUS. So I can come here and I can look at individual charts. If I click on supplements, again, if I click on the gray banner, I can scroll down to the part of the world that I'm interested in. For example, chart supplements for, here's the CONUS, East Central, North Central, South Central. This is more of a civilian version of an airport directory, the civilian version of our IFR SUP. It gives me information about the different airfields that I might want to know before I go flying in there. If I click on, still on supplements. If I scroll all the way to the bottom, and it's kind of hidden, so you have to scroll, but I will find US IFR. That is my IFR SUP. Again, this is the military version of the airport directory. It gives me a lot of military-specific information. Tells me the airport, what state, the 4-letter identifier, whether it's a P field, a joint field, the lat long. Gives me a time conversion from Zulu or UTC to local. Tells me what maps that I can find it on. Gives my runways, the headings, the lighting, the length, the width, the weight bearing capacity, servicing, remarks, operating hours, what kind of communications they have at that airport, what kind of nav aids they have at that airport. Biggest thing with that is if I scroll all the way to the very beginning of the book, and you can see if you click on the bottom, you can get a running banner across the bottom, and you can try to go to just the section that you're interested in. But if I come here to the very beginning, this is the legend and probably the most useful part of this book. If I come all the way to the beginning, it gives us an example, and then it tells us for each and every little comment what paragraph I can find that on and get more information about. For example, runway 09, there's a bunch of numbers, L5, 9, 24, and 50. That says that is in paragraph 14. So if I scroll forward and find paragraph 14, oh, that's lighting. And it tells me all about the lighting that that airport has. So if you have any questions in here in the IFR SUP when you're looking up an airport, I would suggest you come to the very beginning here, to the legend, find where that is talked about, find the right paragraph, and look to see what some of the symbols mean. Going back to Flip and Aero App here, if I click on planning, these are all of my planning documents. Again, the gray banner tells me all of the things that are here. In general, numbers such as AP1, AP2, AP3, those are area planning things, AP1 being for North and South America. Gives me some information about typical things in North and South America, and then eventually gets to the specific airports. If I come up here to page 208, talks about Randolph and what things I need to know about Randolph, about the high mid-air collision potential, the high density student training. Somewhere in here, it'll talk about BAT procedures during the fall. So there's a lot of good long-term information located in AP1 for where we're going. So that's one of the places that we typically need to check before we go to off-base to different places. Now, things such as AP1A, 2A, and 3A, in particular 1A, all of the things that end in an A here are special use airspace. So those are my MOAs, my warning areas, my restricted areas, my alert areas. If I just click at random, these are restricted areas. You can see at the very top, restricted area 5306 Delta. Gives me the area name, gives me the altitudes that the restricted area is active, the times, and importantly, the using agency. So if I wanted to schedule myself into a MOA, I go look up the MOA here and it'll tell me who that scheduling agency is. I could call and work out something to schedule that block. It then gives me details, lat and long, of all of the points that make up the special use airspace, and then any other notes that might be included with that. So this is AP1A. AP1B, and therefore 2B, 3B, different parts of the country, but AP1B, in particular, North and South America, these are my military training routes. So these are going to be my low-level routes, my IFR routes, my slow routes, my VFR routes, as well as air refueling routes. So again, it gives me originating activity, how to schedule it, hours of operation, gives me a description, all of the waypoints for the route, and somewhere in here it will tell me what the route width is. Here we go, 3 nautical miles either side of center line from Alpha to Echo, and then specific operating procedures. So if I'm ever going to be doing a military training route, this is where I can look up that kind of information. And then lastly, I come all the way, oh, I'm sorry, no, back on planning. Let's go all the way to the bottom. We see the Flight Information Handbook is located here, and General Planning. So you should be familiar with the Flight Information Handbook by now. It's a very thin book. Starts off with emergency procedures worldwide. So this is ICAO type stuff in there. Tells me all about my Nordo and what to squawk if I am hijacked or if I have radio failure. Gives me hand signals and things. Section B starts talking about national and international flight data and procedures. One of the very useful parts of this is there in section B, tells me what the approach lighting system is. The symbol that I'm going to find on my approach book, such as A1 type lighting, what that looks like, the different colored lights, how long it is, tells me about the little dot at top, what inverse symbology means. So that's very useful as well. If we go to part C, that's weather information. Tells me all about the different places that I can get weather from, the different hubs, weather shops that service different parts of the CONUS and of the world. And it also gives me information about the METAR and the TAF, how to decode those and how to read those. So if I was to find something in my TAF that I didn't understand, I can come in here. Hey, there's a bunch of numbers. What do those numbers mean? Of course, I can't just so happen to fall on the right pages that I want, but it'll tell me what those numbers mean, such as it's turbulence, or here, icing. A 6, you know, what does that mean? It means icing. Next letter is or number is a 2. Okay, that's light icing. And it tells me how to decode the METAR and the TAF. Tells me how to give pi reps. Also in here, if I can get my pages to turn, someplace in here we do have a chart which will give us here we go, the conversion from statute miles to meters or meters to statute miles. So when I look up my weather and it says that the visibility is forecast to be 6,000, I can look that up and see that, oh, that is 4 statute miles. So this is where that chart is located. The next section, D, gives me other conversion tables that I might need, pressure, altitude to inches of mercury, and Fahrenheit to Celsius, etc. And then lastly, back in part F, we have Nodum abbreviations. So if I'm checking my Nodums and I see codes in there and I don't understand what those codes mean, this is where I can look it up to find out what that is an abbreviation for. If I still need more information, maybe I can either go to GP and look that up in Chapter 2, the dictionary, or maybe call the base ops and find out, ask them directly, say, hey, you have a Nodum that says this, what does that mean? I can get that kind of information. Also located in the planning, as I mentioned a couple times, general planning. As I said, Chapter 2 gives me all of the terms and definitions about what those mean. What is min safe altitude? What is min sector altitude? What does that give me, provide me with? I can find all that kind of information here in the glossary. Get into section 4, tells me how to fill in a 1801 flight plan. And then towards the back, it also has a lot of other good information for flying in the CONUS, pilot procedures, and things that I might want to know about. Lastly, at the very top, if we click on Legend, again, this is the legend for all of the instrument approach books, high books, low books, everywhere in the world. So if I click on that gray banner, I can get a drop down and I can go straight to my US low book if that's what I have a question about. So these are the pages that in the paper copy of the low instrument approach book, you would find these pages at the very beginning of the book. It tells me all about the different symbols, the inverted C, what that means, A and A, treble T, things of that sort. So that is the legend. Now, if I click on app management, and I'm not going to do this here in this little video, this is where I would find, or where I would go in order to download the new version of the data set that I need to put in Aero. I'm not going to go on into that. What I will do is direct your attention back to Goodreader. And in Goodreader, if I click on RIQ Publications, click on Help, we do have a file out there, how to update your Aero app, and it will take you through that in a step-by-step process. What to click on, what to download, and how to move it into standby and ultimately into the current data set. Now, one thing about being professional aviators, the word professional. We know that our data is going to change here in the Aero app every 28 days. So we don't really need an FCIF or need our flight commanders or someone to remind us. We should be professional aviators and constantly checking to make sure that we have the most current up-to-date data. So on our own, we should be able to look at our calendar and say, hey, it's time to go out and download the new data set. Now, they make that data available somewhere around 2 weeks prior to the effective date. So once you get within about 2 weeks, you can go out, download the new set, put it in standby. That way it's there the day of the changeover day. You can just quickly swap your data set and keep flying. All right, let's go back to our Aero app. If I click on the magnifying glass in the upper left-hand corner, I can type in the airport or the nav aid, but in this case, the airport that I want to see. You'll notice right below that, we have the 5 recent things that I've looked up. So I don't need to retype Randolph. I see that I have recently looked at it, so I can take the shortcut and just click on Randolph, and it will take me to all of the information about Randolph. APD, that is the airport diagram. If I click on that, it shows us the taxiways, the runway lengths. It has the different spot elevations, touchdown zone elevations, runway heading. It has the slope of the runway. And anything else on the airport that sticks up that we might want to know about. Where's the tower? What are some of the buildings and some of those altitudes associated with that? Of course, it does give me some frequencies in the top right-hand corner as well. If I click on the IAP, this is all of the instrument approach plates that go into Randolph. Both the high and the low are all combined together into one section, which makes this very easy for us to use. If I click on that gray banner, I get a drop down and it breaks it down by runway. I can scroll through and I can very quickly go straight to, for example, the ILS or localizer to 15 right that I may be looking for. It will also include if there are any radar minimas associated with an ASR or PAR. Some of the airports will put that under this tab. Not all. Some of them will put them in a different tab, but this is one place to look for it. If I click on departure, in particular, what this shows me here are the SIDs associated with that airport. So as you can see here at Randolph, we have no SIDs. So instead, let's select San Angelo, KSJT. And here we go, San Angelo. If I click on departure, yep, still no SIDs there at San Angelo. So that was a bad example to try to use. Arrivals, so I'm going to go back to my Randolph one. If I click on arrivals, these are my stars, my standard terminal area arrival. In the paper copies, the star book is a separate book from the high and the low instrument approach books. Here in Aero App, they just put all of that information under the arrival tab. And you can see here in the greater San Antonio area, some of the SIDs that we have, the Bronze 3, the Centerpoint 2, the Marks 1, etc. If I click on takeoff minima, and this should be a good one to, let's try going back to San Angelo for this example. If I look at an instrument approach plate for San Angelo, you can see that we have a treble T and we also have a inverted A. So to find information about that treble T, that's where I would click on the takeoff minima tab. So these are the IFR takeoff minimums, ODPs, and diverse vector area, radar vector information that they have for San Angelo. Usually this page will try to have it so that just the airport you're looking for shows up. However, it may actually be on a page with other airports, and so when they show you the page, you may still have to look through to find the airport you're looking for. But you can see here, we have San Angelo Regional, Mathis Field. There is a obstacle departure procedure for runway 27 and 36. It also lists some takeoff obstacles. Now these takeoff obstacles, they're known as low close-in obstacles. They are not figured into that departure procedure at all. So as a pilot, we always have to come take a look at these obstacles and then do our own math and our own risk management and find out what's going to be a factor and how I can avoid that during my IFR departure. If I click on the landing minimum tab up top, this takes me to the Ifr Alternate Minimums, or that inverse A that we saw on the approach book. Not a lot to say about this. Some of this information we use as Air Force pilots, some we don't. I'm going to leave that up to you and your studying, your reading of 217 and 11202 Vol 3 to figure out which of those we use or not. But this is where I would find the information. Now, in the paper copy of the high and low altitude approach books, the takeoff minimum, the treble T, as well as this landing minimum, these would be up front in the book right after the legend, before the actual approach plates start. One last thing then, if I come all the way over to the side to the weather tab, this is the actual, with an internet connection, real-time, real-world METAR and TAF for my airport, which in this case is San Angelo. You can see that they're currently calling winds 140 at 14, gusts 23, 10 statute miles clear, altimeter 2982. And then here's the forecast right below that. Nice thing about this in our program, while we don't use the real world METAR and TAFs, we do use the real world NODUMs. So if I click on the Nodum, may take a few seconds depending on my internet connection, but these are the real world Nodums that we brief for our sortie and we brief in our morning formal brief. So this is a quick way to get all of those Nodums to come up, as opposed to going to the Nodum app and having to type in my different airports. Yet another way that we could do that though. So this is Aero, this is Flip. Couple last things before we leave. On the very top, if I click on my moving map. Now, a couple things about the moving map. We have to make sure that we downloaded the charts for where we're going. The CONUS high, the CONUS low, and the CONUS VFR. I can toggle between those. If you see at the very bottom of my screen here, there's a little tab for maps. But click on that, it allows me to choose which map it is that I wish to see. So let's choose the Ifr low map. For some reason, this always comes up at Newton in Iowa. This must be where Aero App has its headquarters. Very bottom right-hand magnifying glass though. Tap on that until it Randolph and it will jump me straight down on my moving map to Randolph. Now what the moving map is, you remember all of those charts that we looked at earlier? Somebody at the Aero App company has taken all of those charts and has pieced them together into one giant picture for us to use. And that's what the moving map is. It's a moving map because I can turn on snap to my airplane in the options down below here. And if I go out and fly in the real world here, as I fly, I'll see my little airplane and I can actually watch it moving on the map, and I can keep my situational awareness about where I'm at and where I'm going. When we download the Aero data, the handout on how to do that, I don't think mentions one file, and it's a useful file. It's called Georeferencing. If I have that downloaded, what that allows me to do is to click on an airport, and I can show the instrument approach plates on my moving map. So if I was in the airplane, I would actually be able to see my airplane flying the 14 DME arc and making that turn to final for the ILS or localizer to 15 right. So that's a very good, very useful situational awareness tool. Now in our simulators in the 558th, we don't have that feature, that GPS connectivity set up, so it doesn't work in our sims. But it's still a very good, useful thing. Everything's to scale that you see, and so that works wonders for situational awareness. Now, what I can do with this moving map, besides just look at it, I can actually do some mission planning. Down in the bottom left-hand corner, there is a red square with a little white triangle. If I click on that, I can put in a route of flight that I wish to fly, and I can see it highlighted over here on my map. So for example, let's put in our first point. So click on the little plus sign. Let's put in Randolph, and it's going to start at Randolph. Let's add another point, so another plus sign. Now to do this feature I'm about to show you, we need to make sure that we have the distance feature selected. You see where it says ICAO and name in white, and you see in blue it says distance, because I have distance selected. So make sure you select distance. And what we're going to put in is the NavAid, RND, the radial, so no spaces, 157, and now the DME, again, no spaces, 024. You know this as falls. If I tell it to go, it puts the point in, and you can see on my moving map, it shows my route all the way out to falls. So let's have a little fun here. Let's put in auger. Now, falls and auger are not official ICAO recognized waypoints. So typing in falls or auger, it won't find it. So we have to use radial and DME. So auger is the RND, 131 radial at 024 DME. Boom, there's auger. Now, one thing you notice is it tries to help me out and it reorders my points in the way that it thinks I want them. And that's not how I want them in this case. So down below, if I click on Edit, and you see off to the right of these points, there's 3 little horizontal lines. So if I grab the 131 and hold it, I can slide it down and change the order that it lists things. That looks a lot better. That's what I want. So now I'm going to turn Edit off. Let's add a point must be. Now must be is a recognized 5-letter ICAO waypoint, so I just type in must be. And this is also a good point to show you that when it lists things, the first group of places it lists are going to be airports, then it will list nav aids, and then it will list waypoints. So you see must be is listed as a waypoint. So if I click on must be, and again, that's not where I wanted it, so I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to move must be down to the bottom. Here we go. Because let's say I want to fly the Augur ILS. So after Augur, I'm going to be going to must be. So there's our route to must be. If I look at the RND 131 at 24, which is Augur, notice right underneath it gives me a distance and a heading to the next waypoint of must be. So it's 35 miles on a heading of 330. That might be important if I'm trying to figure out my descents and how I'm going to intercept that 14 DME arc on the approach plate. I at least know what heading I'm going to be arriving at must be at. Now I'm going to do a little wizardry here. I'm going to add another point, the Randolph Vortex. Move it down. Oh, move it down, put it after must be. And I'm going to add one more point. I'll explain why I'm doing that here in just a second. The RND 094, and let's pick a distance that's way too big because I don't really care about the distance. I care about the line that it's going to draw. So let's choose 50 DME and hit go. All right. So you know that if you're flying to must be from Augur, we have to get down to 4,000 feet by the 094 radial. So that last line I put in is that 094 radial. Now what I can do is I can zoom in here. I can press and hold right where those lines come together. Tells me current point that I pressed. I'm going to select that. And I'm going to tell it to drop a pin. I don't care about the name, just drop it. So there you go, I have a little pin there. If I click on that pin again, I want to add it to my route. Now, let's see. All right, looks like it put it as the second point in my plan here, and I don't want that. Let's move it down just after Augur, but before must be. There we go. Now, the reason I did that is because this now tells me, after I go to Augur, it tells me 18.5 miles until I get to that point, to that 094 radial. I can now use that in my mission planning to calculate a descent gradient. I'm at 13,000 feet, going down to 4,000, so I have 9,000 feet to lose in 18.5 miles. So I can calculate my descent angle. I'm not going to get into that right here. I have a video out on the Google Drive that tells you how to do that if you need any refresher tips. What I want to show you though is that there's a lot of neat stuff we can do with the moving map here in order to create our route, to calculate distances, to get our headings, Is it going to be, am I within 70? If I'm going to go hold, we can get a lot of that distance and heading off of this map if we're creative enough to find a way to use it. Now, if I click on route, I have a couple choices. I can save this, load it again if it's already been saved, or better yet, I can clear it. And I can get rid of all that junk. So that is a little bit of how to use the Aero app, a little bit about what Flip is, what all Flip entails. One of the things to watch out for is when you finish this program and you're doing your what's the word I'm looking for? Your clearing out checklist, okay? You're done, your graduation checklist. One of the things it talks about is turn in Flip. So that doesn't mean this. Now it does talk about your ETD. You need to clean it. You need to reset it and then turn it back into the bookstore. But in particular, when it says turn in your Flip, if you have borrowed any of the paper copies of the charts or high altitude, low altitude, IFR sub, flight information handbook from your flight room, that is simply a reminder to bring those back into your flight room, put them back on the shelf in your flight room, okay? By turning in your ETD, you will be turning in the rest of your Flip. Well, there you go. I hope this was informative for you. I hope it maybe shows you a couple tricks and things you can use. There are a lot of things I haven't even gotten into that you may be able to do with this. So explore, use this. It's provided for your benefit and to help make you successful. If there's anything I can do to help you, my name's Mr. Brown. I'm down in A-Flight. Please come see me. If I'm not around, feel free to find any instructor in the squadron. Happy flying.